circumstances, that impression and his preconceived notions would qualify as a strike for cause. And let me just add as an aside, I don't believe that in this case there has been evidence, nor will there be evidence presented either by the state or defense to definitively confirm or dispel whether cut circle and cutthroat are one and the same, or are associated or affiliated groups, or are different groups. None of us know that with any certainty. But that's not the issue for this case. His conclusions and his opinions are that they are somehow affiliated or associated. And quite frankly, some of the evidence that we have heard is from Demetrius Ford, for example, that cutthroat was started by a rapper named Soulja Slim. We've also heard in some recordings the voice identified as that of the defendants talking about the rapper Soulja Slim. And we have also heard the defendant, or the voice identified as the defendant, rapping in many of these phone calls. And because Mr. Reed identified his group as being a group of rappers, and in fact defense counsel questioning about that, that may, I don't know, but it may solidify his opinion that these are affiliated or associated groups. So I say all that to say that with these impressions, with his preconceived notions, and with this court's reasonable doubt upon his ability to be a fair and impartial juror, not only in the guilt phase but in the penalty phase, I'm going to strike juror number 52, Mr. Reed, from this jury panel, and alternate number 1 will become now the 12th juror. I'll entertain any objections, motions you wish to make at this time, but that's the court's ruling.
Thank you, Your Honor. Obviously, I understand the court's ruling. Just for record purposes, we maintain our argument that the difference and what we would suggest the true analysis should be is the fact that after a very lengthy jury selection process in which the state of Florida, as well as the defense, had the opportunity to inquire of the jurors in every fashion they felt appropriate to determine their death qualification, Mr. Reed passed that with flying colors. It was only after the introduction of evidence, the trial had started, that this particular juror found something so overwhelmingly mitigating that in his mind would prevent him from imposing the death penalty, because he recognized, I will be using what is offered to me under Florida law, that the law neither compels nor requires a death sentence. That mitigation can be found in anything, whether it's presented to them. It could be as simple as, I like the color of his shirt, and the law recognizes that. I think it's an unusual experience to have a juror express that, but I still maintain that the only thing that he expressed was not that he is death qualified, but that in this particular case, he heard something during the presentation of evidence that he found so mitigating that it would likely cause him to vote a certain way. I agree with the court's analysis that I'm not sure there's any inquiry that would satisfy either side. I think it creates more problems, but I still maintain that he has said nothing to indicate that he is not death qualified as he was found previously through his answers on Monday and Tuesday. It's just simply under the facts of this case, which is what we ask these jurors to do, and what they consider to be mitigating is obviously based on their own experiences, and that's our system.
But don't you agree, or maybe you won't, but had he provided these answers prior to being sworn, that is, that he had a dear friend murdered who was part of perhaps the same group, assuming either side had even mentioned cutthroat during jury selection, which neither side did, and he gave the answers he gave, he would not have been death qualified to sit on this jury. In other words, if he said, I could never, under any circumstances, impose the death penalty for somebody who was in cutthroat because of the murder of my friend in 2016, the same year that this incident happened, he would not have been allowed to sit on the jury. He would have been stricken for cause. Do you acknowledge that?
I do acknowledge that, Your Honor, just as I would acknowledge someone who was not told a devastating fact about the crime. I gave the example yesterday of that it was a death of a child, or that it was multiple deaths, and that was not brought out in jury selection. And for whatever reason, a juror comes forward and says, I wasn't aware that it was that kind of an egregious fact. And I'm just letting you know it's going to creep in that I had an experience with a neighbor child's death that is going to be very overwhelming to me. But it was after the presentation of the evidence. I don't think we have grounds to exclude them.
Well, what would a court do then if, say, in those circumstances, a juror comes in and says, I've learned that it's the death of a child. There is no way that I can follow the law or apply the facts to the law and render a verdict in this case. Would the court have to leave that juror on or be able to strike that juror for cause if they cannot do their juror duty?
And I think, honestly, Your Honor, that is the difference, is if someone says, I can't follow the law, mercy is part of the law. He's just saying, he just gave us an indication. You know, I indicated yesterday I would consider mercy perfectly allowed under the law. He had answered that in our original jury selection. And I think we were very clear that mercy wasn't any specific reason. It was just simply, I don't want to impose the death penalty for this case under these facts. And it was somewhat surprising, but by virtue of the state's opening statement, bringing out that detail, he, for whatever reason, finds that mitigating. But he's still following the law, Your Honor.
All right, well, your objections are noted for the record. Thank you. That is the court's ruling. So what I'm going to do, rather than have him sit through an hour and 10-minute recording, I'm going to bring him in here. I'm going to go ahead and excuse him for the day and excuse him completely. And then we will bring the rest of the jurors in to continue with the trial. Is Mr. Reed present?
He is.
All right.
I'll just need his parking validated.
Okay.
So then they can get it out.
Okay, thank you. Good. You'll just bring him in. And I will file with Madam Clerk the transcript of Mr. Reed's communications with the court. And that is what? Court Exhibit 5. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Reed. How are you this morning? Good. Mr. Reed, you have done nothing wrong, sir. Again, I want to thank you for your honesty and candor the other day. Upon further consideration or reflection, sir, we're going to go ahead and excuse you from this jury trial. So I'm sorry I made you come back here this morning. We needed to do some additional research and look into some matters. But I do want to thank you so much for answering your jury summons on Monday, coming down to the courthouse and participating and listening very intently here these last 4 days. But your service will no longer be needed. So I'm going to ask you to turn in your juror button to Madam Bailiff. She's going to get your parking validated. And if you need any note or any written excusal for work or school, we're happy to give that to you.
Oh,
Okay?
go to the jury services and get that?
I have a judge.
We have it right here from Madam Clerk.
Okay.
All right, I thank you so much.
I thank you. Have a great day.
You too. All right. I still don't know if all the jurors are here yet.
They should be.
Okay. I'm sorry? Oh, really? Well, I had them all muted. They're all muted, so we don't have that reverberation.
Okay, we're not going to.
No. tonight's meeting.
Okay.
While we wait for the jury, since it's a new day, I don't know, do I need to give the instruction on the transcripts again? Or do you think
I think the court gave it twice.
I have well, I gave it once. I gave it the second time to the juror who asked if she could write on the transcripts.
Okay, that was just a six.
Just move this chair.
Are they all here, the rest of them?
I think you're all right.
Okay, then we're ready for them?
Mr. Cooper and I thought maybe we could raffle off the chair. See if we can raise some money for court system.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can follow along. I am going to read the instruction again.
Entering the courtroom.
All right, good morning and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You may take your seats. Please be sure the notepads you're collecting are indeed yours if you are taking notes during this trial. As you recall, we are in the state's case in chief and are listening to recordings. Let me remind you again that you are about to hear a recorded conversation. These recorded conversations are proper evidence and you may consider them just as any other evidence. You also have, of course, the transcripts which have been furnished to you of these recorded conversations. Let me remind you the recordings are the evidence and the transcripts provided to you are a guide to help you follow as you listen to the recordings. The transcripts are not evidence of what was actually said or who said it. So please don't write on the transcripts as you will not be taking those transcripts with you into the jury room during your deliberations. If you notice any difference between what you hear on the recording and what you read in the transcript, you must rely on what you hear and not what you read. So at this time, State, you may continue.
Commissioner, thank you. We are publishing State's Exhibit 166, which is a visitation that took place on September 21st, 2016 at 1725.
This call is from a corrections facility and is subject to monitoring and recording.
Oh, no, I had to use the other one, you feel me? Hey, look at how I left. Hey, that's how we All right, Yeah, you got on the phone with the boy, free me up, free me up, free me up, free me up. I'm like, man, you ain't calling me, you know, like, bro. Shit, ain't that fuck, I ain't even talking to you, I'm trying to talk to you when you feeling shit. What the fuck you got going on with this? Yeah, I'm going on with it, man. What's wrong? Yeah, she's showing up. Yeah, she do it like us, though. Don't say that, though. She does like us, don't she? Yeah, that's how I found her out. Cute as fuck. Tell her to stand up, man. See what she looks like. Tell her to go out and just thinking around all the negativity, you feel me? Because you gotta make up, they gotta do something good, now you feel me? Real shit, boy. I'm gonna tell her that boy, he not a 4-2-4 game. It's over with. I think, so I'm saying, yeah, let you come up here by yourself without your ID and shit, like, she had to ID. So did she have to be with you for you to come on down? Did she have to be with you for you to come in? So what they did, they made you Oh yeah, he got to show you how to do this. Oh yeah. So you know how to do this. What you talking about? The photo. You know, like the photo. The reason why I say I can't do it with 2 hands, but you got like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like that. You feel me? That's why I was like, fold and then turn up the case. When the nigga stop the fold, and the nigga just turn up the case like that. You know? Man, fuck. I don't know what the fuck that nigga out doing that, man. This time of day. He talking about this time of day. For real. Nobody came on that day. And I seen Giselle and shit. I seen Giselle and she was coming through this, and I'm like, damn, what's wrong with this shit? My shit the same, bro. My shit the same. I just showed up, bro. I just got the whole this is out. You crazy as fuck. I ain't got no my shit big too. Yo. Well, I'm gonna put my shit together, though. Well, I'm saying, long one. This is my shit. I did my shit. You did your shit by yourself? Yeah. That's my whole week ago. Yo, I had a little two-star that corner. You know, grow niggas out all the way? So that's how I'm gonna grow like that? You ain't gonna put no more together? I think you gonna have to put some more together. Yeah. My shit back is skinny as a shit. Yeah, my shit was skinny as it is, so you feel me like that. But my shit out. Like that's how I started my shit. And like little twist like that. Then I put all my shit in threes because they were like, well, your shit gonna be skinny as fuck, your shit gonna be popping and shit. So that's when I flattened my shit up into these bitches. You know what I'm saying? Fat. Stupid new girl one. You know what I'm saying? So, well, you ain't got no motherfucking chance, you know. So what you gonna do when you leave here? But chill, like I say, man, ball the shit, man, you know what I'm saying? Don't be comfortable here, man, feel that
So, Amy, well, roll your eyes. Roll your eyes.
She gonna roll her? She gonna roll her?
I don't know, probably.
You?
That's gonna be fucking back in her head. No, I did.
Let me see her teeth.
You got all these Okay, so there. Your feet. Take your feet.
Tell her, tell me.
Take feet. Take feet. Take feet. I get hands.
She trying to shake her hell like this. I told you to tell you to go up the cave, man.
I don't have to let.
I told you the last time.
I don't have to let.
Stop playing.
I don't.
Do it.
I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, me do that.
You know what he's doing. Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Mama told you what happened? You know what happened?
I'm talking
You know what happened?
today.
Everything what happened. Remember what I had on the last time? You thought they were black.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Lord.
Yeah, shit real, man, 'cause they ain't playing, they ain't playing the spell, I don't know what the fuck they have. What the hell was that? I tell you what Hey, hey. What you be doing? What you be doing? What have you Pull on my little toe. Let me see how long I have. She look like she wanna fight for She's so cute. Yes. Cute children. Yeah, I told you, you know what I'm saying? I told you she was gonna be her little son.
You are lying. I don't know everybody look like this.
She ain't no little.
I don't know like that. We were together.
Who?
Here.
Sierra? Red Sierra?
You were like damn late.
You know her son? You see what her son look like?
He said like a damn right too.
Damn, she had another baby.
A girl.
I thought she had herpes.
I don't know what yeah. You don't mention no ordinary. She was like a big.
Like a what?
Like a big.
You know? So her child, her little girl look cute.
Yeah. Like a naked or right.
No. That's crazy. Tell her what you trying to show us. What's all that about? What that is for?
Apple. I think that's why. Listen, I'm gonna get you.
Oh, you want to talk to me? I talk to her, bro.
I know you will, if you ain't make a problem.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to talk to you too. It's just, I ain't talking to you forever.
You don't lie, you just have to be remembered.
Huh?
You just have to be remembered.
Yeah, I know. I ain't gonna do it. Boy, you look like a grown as fuck, boy. I remember when the nigga was going flip. Hey, look, did you see the picture that she posted? Her screenshot? don't want to be lying and shit. I want you to check and see me lying and shit. Yeah, I don't get out there with that bitch, so I ain't gonna cause I clean inside. Oh, yeah. She got some smoke shit on her ass. Where's the feet? I want to see if she can smoke. I doubt it, What cat came got you from? Yeah. Got it? Yeah. On done? How you got it on? Boy. Hey, what that nigga Kevin talking about that? What's that nigga? get all that police and shit. You quit up. She got it. you gotta have the kids, man. What you working on, man? Okay, you been so busy in the streets, you ain't set no cones up. No, they can't at that age. They supposed to be showing out on Saturday and all this good shit right about now, man. Oh, see, it's gonna be settled. Oh, that's see, it's gonna be settled. all everything. I say we are. Well, God, my way crazy. You trying to move out? How are you trying to move out so fast, man? You listen, this is what I'm trying to tell you. If you, listen, you can tell people that you said, well, it's you and it's fucking private, okay? And you, I understand that, but you know how fucking real this world is out here. Yeah. Know what I'm saying? I don't want you standing by yourself with Scott. And people like run down and try to rape you or some shit. You never know what the fucking happened, man. You see it, man. You got Mister, I was on talking about right now. I'm gonna be out. I'm gonna be out soon. Okay, that's it. Clean that fuck. I'm gonna be there. I don't think it's a big place. That's it. Clean that fuck. I would have probably I would have wanted to. I would have flashed on the girl while she don't know me before. See how it was with your wife, right? You think you make a property a good boy and get paid? You think so? She's okay to get paid. Come on, just let them get paid with you. Go right up there. Look at all that. Hell, I love that shit. Yeah, they don't come on out. That's good. I would not allow Justin can't go leave here. So what's up, man? What the tell you gonna be when I get out of there, man? That's it. Guaranteed. I ain't even gonna lie. That nigga deep, but that nigga gangster fuck. I said deep gangster fuck. I swear. Well, she just fucking had to. See, that's how I put a chair and leave. That's why I'm like, blame her up. I was gonna ask you to watch her. How did you do something? I got to tell her a little bit down. Look, she can't down well. She can't keep going outside. Look, she can get anything. He can't get no this. Yeah, he can. Well, he's not about to get up. What? He's going to go with it. Look at him. I can't wait till I get out of this motherfucker. Look at her. Look at her eyes and shit. This is just like a question. Y'all is bigger than all the rest of the Carolina Continental. Oh, she died. Yeah. Her. Talking crazy shit. Talking about my dog. The reason why she in there. I like she wild. She talking crazy. He got nobody to do hard work. That nigga beat up in there full. He talking
I think all that stuff, all that shit, I don't have something.
Okay, deep college and set up my shit on some poor ass shit. They asked me what my shit at. My clothes and my shoes and shit.
In your closet.
What I have what's all in this closet, man.
Man, don't go, you got them in the damn closet, let them be back in the closet.
That's because I'm on my TV with that. Ask me what my shit is.
You say the top of the shower, all the way there, man. The white room, and the black. You know, all of these, you don't need that testify.
Oh, see, you know how to help the kids. So what we gonna do on here? So you trying to have no kids?
Who?
You.
Right now?
She right, she about like, oh.
Yeah, that'd be good enough time. I can't realize my nerves was there. My nerves was there. That we have my nerves there.
Yeah, that's, you know, you gotta be, you know what I'm saying, just like your mom, and like my mom. 2 kids, 2 kids.
Why did it say
They can have the baby,
I'm not really gonna take it home.
how you gonna tell all the brother when he gonna leave? Yeah.
I got the one where it's turning back, and I never, let's see, I can turn it after. I can get some of it.
You gonna show me not to the one on the phone to your husband? No. Fuck on.
I don't know.
You what?
I don't have one that's a friend. If I'm just something like that.
Oh yeah. I'm just making sure that this nigga put the money on the phone. He be on the phone. He some old tight, he a little tight wire ass. He like, I ain't got money. He tight like a motherfucker. He's tight. I'm telling you, he get my next to everything that he got. I swear to God. Hell yeah. You don't like the, he like the baby all the time, which is good. That's what I'm saying. Like what? When he goes to bed, he won't like to tell go with his mom and shit. He said, like, oh, shit. I ain't Cause I was trying to focus on the tech and shit, and I lost my damn money. I'm gonna be hungry as fuck tonight. But shit, I'm gonna get my money tomorrow with that D and put on the board. That's a real brother right there. I love him. Okay? When your brother get up? She love me. I thought she said she'd be that bad around. Tell D to make sure him and her take a picture today, cause they matching and shit. Look, man, husband, you'll get him. Oh, Lord, I got angry. Something like this. I'm glad you raised my up good. But all that ghetto shit, that shit is for the birds. All that ghetto shit, that shit is for the birds. Don't have around no ghetto ass people and shit. Like, where's she going? What the hell is she going? What is she doing?
Did you go to the
Where is she going? Huh? Tell me to make this something real quick. Tell me to go down there and get the mirror real quick. They call the man out there as well. They're like, crazy. And they're like, good to see you. run with it, like, damn, yeah, that's my bike. I saw that, but that nigga fucked with me too, he from my neighborhood. You be that everything. I want to go back to the normal fun and think about it. It ain't nothing one weather.
Okay.
On that, what could he put on it?
I don't know. It must be like having on that above. I don't know what it's got there.
Well, I could do it.
I don't know what that is. I can't even remember what $2,000 profit about what this is. You know, yeah, look on your Facebook, I feel like somebody did something that was like that.
I'm finna try my own.
It's well around.
Yeah, let her rock. Let her rock.
Good, fine. I'm trying to get a birthday party. They don't do a calendar party. I know where I'm a cowgirl,
Cowgirl.
right in the backyard.
You so what?
I'll have a pig, I have a train.
A pig. Yeah, they were real to the you were like,
Can we go now? Can we go?
I'm talking on the road.
How long y'all
Even though you're talking like 7 more minutes.
That's a long minute.
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
Nah, 7:05. 7:05. What time is it y'all can?
Well, I'm about to look at it. That's on my house. I come there. You should have gone so late.
Who was it? Yeah, I was up there in the individual room while y'all wasn't even in this room. What's up, man?
All right, do you have any further questions for the detective?
Very good.
Okay.
Detective, on that visitation that we just finished listening to, towards the end, did you hear a statement made by one of the individuals that he had been called out
Yes, sir.
and then referenced his name?
Yes, sir.
And what was the name that he gave?
The name, the part where he was called out,
And he said McCray. Did you hear that portion?
I'd have to go back and re-listen. I thought you were talking about something different. I apologize.
Just a few minutes ago, towards the end of the dissertation, did you hear the portion where the person speaking said, they called me out and said, McCray?
Oh, yes, sir. I apologize. Yes, yes, sir.
What is this defendant's last name?
McCray.
And we talked earlier about PIN numbers and PIN swapping. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
And on one of the calls that was played yesterday, this defendant was speaking, and do you recall hearing some statements where he was communicating with someone saying, I'm going to give my PIN number out?
Yes, sir.
Now, is that a practice that commonly occurred in the Duval County Jail?
Yes, sir.
And is that something that you personally investigate as a homicide detective, or who would look into that if that was going to be investigated?
Not me. I would not. I handle homicides, murder police. That would, if something inside the jail, if there's something that is according to their policies, and the corrections officers would look into that or investigate that.
But again, is that something that happens many, many, many times commonly throughout the jail?
Yes, sir.
And then additionally, when an inmate is making a call and puts in their PIN number, as we've heard on some of the recordings, they'll say this is a call from Global Television, and it gives a name.
Yes, sir.
Is that name that comes up the name that's associated with that PIN number that is input?
That's correct. And on the program that we have, it lists whose ever PIN number is making that call from that number. Yes, sir.
So it indicates what PIN number is being used. Does it necessarily indicate who is actually making the call?
No, it'd be, for me, it'd be the same as if I called my mom or my wife from my phone, or if I called her from your phone. I'm making the call, but it would just register as either your phone or my phone.
So the caller ID is what's important, is the actual voice of the person making the call.
Right, yes, sir.
No more questions.
Okay, cross-exam.
Thank you, Judge.
What's that? Oh, sure. No. That's fine. You can leave it up. Good morning, Detective Reese. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
Good to see you again. Thank you. All right, just touch on that real fast. So we heard, I guess in this situation, we heard through all those calls, we heard three separate names. One was from someone by the name of Corey, right?
Correct.
And then your testimony was that was from the defendant, Jecorian McCray, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then there are two other PIN numbers. I think there was 2016 1659. That PIN number was registered, I guess, based on the person's voice to a person named Jeremiah.
Right.
Okay. Did you do anything to investigate or determine who Jeremiah was?
No, sir.
So he wasn't interviewed to see if he had any knowledge about this incident, who Mr. McCray, or anything of that sort?
No, sir.
Okay. The other calls, I think, were put through 2015 15968 by a person named Demetrius.
Right.
Okay. Same question. Did you find out who Demetrius was, or do any sort of look up to find out who that individual
No,
was?
sir.
Didn't interview him about this particular
No,
incident.
sir.
All right. Mr. Maxwell, Jecorian Maxwell, you testified that you knew his voice, and you also testified that that's the brother of Mr. McCray, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You did mention, I think, on direct testimony, when you were summarizing your investigation, that Mr. Maxwell had confessed to basically being the shooter. When you said confess, this wasn't a confession to law enforcement, correct?
Correct. Right.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth by any means, but your basis for you using the word confess was based on the claims that you heard on the jail calls, on that jail visitation call.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was when he claimed that I did this or I did that, your summary of it was that he confessed.
Right.
But he didn't confess to you.
Objection, Judge.
All right, let me see court reporter from the counsel at sidebar. Ross, you may proceed with clarifying your question.
Thank you, Judge, I appreciate your work. Not by any means trying to confuse you, I want to make sure Mr. Maxwell did not confess to you to being the actual shooter.
That's correct.
Thank you. Now, there were several items, I think, that you testified that were collected from Mr. Maxwell's room. I think there was a
Yes.
search warrant of Mr. Maxwell's house, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to refer to, actually, it's on the property storage card. Let me grab that. 1 second, Your Honor. And those items were several items of clothing. And I'm referring to actually property storage card CCR number 166257744, submission 803141 on 9/25/2016.
What's the sequence number on that?
Sequence number is 5.
Thank you.
That helps refer you to your.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me know when you get there.
Got it. Yes, sir.
Okay, so on those items that were collected were a black t-shirt with design, a green t-shirt with knocked up sea adventures on it, a green t-shirt, plaid boxers, a maroon polo shirt, a black t-shirt, a red t-shirt with design, a gray t-shirt, a gray hoodie, which we saw a picture of, gray sweatpants, which we saw a picture of, gray zip-up hoodie, and black sweatpants.
Yes, sir.
Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you able to, through your investigation, have any of those items tested for any evidentiary value?
No.
Okay. And what I mean by evidentiary value is any like gunshot residue or anything of that sort, blood, DNA, sweat, shards of glass, anything like that.
No, sir.
Okay. You, I think, also put into evidence through some photographs, some pictures of some gloves.
Yes, sir.
Same question. Were those items tested by fire department, law enforcement for any of the items or any of the evidence of blood, DNA, sweat, gunshot residue, anything of that sort?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. No, and just again to clarify, no gun in this case was recovered, correct?
That's correct.
There was some reference in the calls that we heard about a location of a gun, like in a cul-de-sac.
Yes,
You
sir.
recall that? And you did, in fact, actually send K-9 to that particular area that you thought a gun possibly could be. Is that
That's
right?
correct. We initially did that. Yes, sir.
But no gun was recovered on that. Okay. And then as far as Detective Kicklider's testimony, she was extremely thorough, and we have several pieces of evidence that showed all of the different ballistics and cartridges and fragments and all those things that were recovered from the scene. And I believe at your direction, working with her as you do, you had sent some of those items out to be tested as well.
Yes, sir.
And then referring, I believe, to an FBLE report that I received on March 21st of 2018, that was the swappings of the casings, it was outside doorknob, outside door, the casings near the victim's leg, and swabs actually from Jecorian Maxwell. So did any of those items come back to show the identity of the shooter at all, or have any sort of evidentiary value?
I was just referencing that report, so I don't misspeak. I've got it.
You got it, it's agency number, I don't know what you need from it, that's the only number.
No, you just said the date was.
Okay, March
Yes, sir.
21st, 18, yes, sir.
Their results were that those items quantitatively failed to demonstrate a sufficient amount of DNA.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Is it your testimony that after interviewing the victim's family in this case, the daughter and the wife, that they were not able to identify or give you any sort of identification as to the actual shooter?
They did not see the shooting, right? Yes, sir.
So they couldn't tell you if there was one shooter or two shooters or three shooters?
They did not say that, right? Yes, sir.
Now, so if they didn't see the shooter, they could not tell, and I don't know if it was asked of you, but did you learn from them that the shooter moved into the house, or is it from your investigation that the shooter remained outside of the home?
We are not 100% confident in that. The shooter could very well have come inside because we do have casings that are inside and even under the victim.
Okay. But you can't say for sure whether or not that happened through the force of the gun itself, depending on the location of the shooter, or whether in the story, of course, to save Mr. Breton, that some of those casings and things were moved around, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
One of the victims testified, and we haven't talked about this, but I read it in your report, and I know that we talked to you about it in deposition, that she heard a car squeal off or leave relatively rapidly. Were you able to investigate that at all and to find out the identity of that vehicle?
We were unable to find out what type of car.
Okay. I think later on, I mean, this kind of happened kind of fast. I mean, once you got to the case, it didn't take you long to basically solve it and arrest, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think maybe a day or two afterwards, you were contacted by one of the neighbors on B.C. Johnson, I think Mr. DeBerry.
Yes, sir.
Mr. DeBerry had some surveillance, and it had some surveillance of a vehicle. And that vehicle actually, for purposes of timestamp, I think, was moving in the direction of the victim's house about 4 or 5 minutes before the shooting, and then leaving from the victim's house 4 or 5 minutes after the shooting. Is that correct?
I forget the time frame, but there was a vehicle.
Okay.
Mostly it's because of the time of day you saw headlights.
Okay. And did you review that surveillance?
Yes, sir.
And could you get any type, and I'm sure you reviewed it over and over and over again in every possible angle, is there any evidentiary value that came of that, be it make of the car, color of the car, anything that you could get out of that to determine the source or identity of the owner of that vehicle at all?
No, sir.
Lastly, with regards to the victim's family testimony, is it your testimony that in interviewing her, she had heard, again, I think she testified that she ran back under the cover and called 911, based on her dad saying, "Get away." She heard a series of shots, then a pause, and then a series of more shots. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there's no surveillance from that home as far as the front part of the house?
That's correct.
Were you able to check to see, because that house or that location of that house is in a homeowners association, was there any surveillance whatsoever from anybody else in that area of the home?
The only other video surveillance was the one that we just spoke about of the car.
Okay. All right. When you interviewed Ms. Shelton, there were some issues with regards to her cell phone not being where she said she was in the morning hours after the shooting. Is that correct?
Initially, yes, sir.
Were you able to ever resolve that? I know she always said that she was home, but I think her cell phone location and GPS had her off on 295 somewhere traveling, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you ever able to reconcile her whereabouts?
Not completely.
Specifically? I didn't know, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Not completely, no, sir.
Mr. Ford, Demetrius Ford was also, I believe, arrested. And Ms. Shelton was arrested after you interviewed her, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you made a determination, and tell us how that works. When you do your investigation and you do your interview, you develop your probable cause, correct?
Yes.
Based on the facts in your investigation to make an arrest based on a certain charge, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And in this particular case, it was your decision, and then you, and what you ultimately arrest somebody for, do you consult with the state attorney's office before that? You do that sometimes, or
Yes, sir.
how does that work?
I did, yes, sir.
You did, okay. I think in this case you did.
Yes, sir.
All right, and you basically felt that you had enough evidence to arrest Ms. Shelton for tampering with the witness.
Right. We had a warrant for her arrest for that.
Okay. Based on the calls that you or your other detective, your team, had listened to, correct?
Yes, sir.
The calls that we heard here today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In those calls that Ms. Shelton had actually made, when she was talking purportedly to Mr. McCray, she had already told Mr. McCray that she had talked to Mr. McCray's mother and had gone over to the victim's residence before Mr. McCray even said anything about that. Is that correct?
I don't recall. I don't remember
Okay.
now if that was before that or if that was after. I don't remember the sequence. There was so many hours yesterday.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So I'm not, so basically, I understand that. So, but ultimately, she was arrested for tampering based on the fact that she went over to the victim's residence
Right.
and offered them money.
Yes.
Now, with regards to Demetrius Ford, you had testified that Demetrius Ford was arrested for conspiracy to commit murder, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is it through your investigation that you were satisfied that he was at this home based primarily on the fact that his phone's GPS location said he was at home at the time of the murder?
There were several factors of that. One was certainly his cell phone records, corroborated by what his girlfriend said, corroborated by what he said, and corroborated by what Jecorian Maxwell said on the jail phone calls as well, but Peanut was not there.
Okay. So Maxwell's claims that basically that he did it himself and Peanut didn't show or went there.
Right, yes, sir.
Okay. Sounds like a simple question, but I'll ask it. If somebody leaves their phone at home, it's going to show that your phone is at home.
Correct.
His body doesn't necessarily have to be there, he could be in another location.
That is correct, yes, sir.
And the reason that I ask you that is because out of all of the people that I think were arrested, Mr. Ford is the only one who actually had physical injuries to himself regarding cuts on the hand, consistent with glass breaking, not saying that it is, but consistent with glass breaking regarding the actual shooting itself, correct?
He had injuries to his hand.
Did you have a problem with that as investigating it?
Initially, yes.
Okay. Through your investigation, did you believe that more than one person actually was at the scene of the murder? More than one perpetrator, based on what your evidence was pointing to?
But will you ask the question again? I'm sorry.
Based on your investigation and your interviews of everybody, were you satisfied that there was only one person involved in the actual shooting?
One shooter, one trigger puller, but I think that there were other people that are involved.
Okay. That you believe to have been at the scene?
Yes.
Okay. Which leads me to my next question. Paul McLeod. Paul McLeod was a person also referred to in all throughout these calls as Little Pete. What did you do with regards to investigating anybody by the name of Paul McLeod?
Same type of investigation with this as well.
Was there anything that you could put together that placed Paul McLeod at the scene or as the shooter in this case?
There was not to put him as the shooter.
Do you believe he was involved in this case?
I do.
Do you believe that he was at the scene?
I am not sure of that. His cell phone records put him in that area. However, the jail phone calls don't, all of them don't corroborate that. And I don't have him on the jail phone calls talking about his involvement. So I did not have enough to arrest Paul McLeod.
Okay. So he was not arrested and he was not charged?
No, sir.
When you originally, so Mr. Ford was arrested for conspiracy. He was not charged with first-degree murder. But let me break that down for you too, because I don't want it to be any way seem misleading. When you arrest somebody for a charge, it's not, at that point, your job pretty much is done. I mean, you have some follow-up to do, maybe with the lab results and the things of that sort. But after your interviews have been completed, your evidence has been submitted, as a detective, a homicide detective, your job is done at that point. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The decision to charge what particular charge a person is facing or filed against is not, you do not make that decision.
All right, I'm sorry. Let me hear the full question, and then is there an objection?
Yes, Your Honor, there'll be a motion.
Okay, let me see, court and counsel, sidebar.
Okay, sorry, I was looking at the report. Okay,
I'm sorry.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you. Report. So, Detective, I was asking you, after your investigation, your decision to make the arrest is based on the facts that you have in front of you. Sometimes you consult with the state attorney's office, and that's basically what the charges are that are levied against the individuals, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In this particular case, you arrested, I believe, both Corey Maxwell and Jecorian McCray for murder.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then I believe the state attorney's office has sought an indictment through the grand jury, and presented their case to the grand jury, and then the charges were upgraded to first-degree murder.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I think 2 days after, on the 22nd, the day after the incident, you and Detective Bobby Bowers had brought Mr. McCray over and to interview him. You recall that?
Objection, Judge. Maybe personal or something.
All right, let me see court counsel at sidebar. right, ladies and gentlemen, we have some matters we need to address outside your presence, and it is now 10:45. I've been here for quite some time, so I'm going to give you your morning recess at this time. I'd ask that you leave your notepads behind and the transcripts. You can have a step into the jury room to use facilities or grab a snack, and we'll call you in here just as soon as we're done with this matter so we can continue with the examination. Thank you very much. So, defense wish to ask, well, I need the witness to step off the witness stand. You can exit the courtroom momentarily while we discuss this objection. Thank you, and we'll call you back in when we're done. All right, go ahead. So the objection I received from the state is relevance to the question that the defense was to ask Detective Reeves about interviewing the defendant and telling the defendant that he was arrested for conspiracy. Is that correct?
In part, Judge, I also advise the court that it's the state's position, it's also a patient testimony.
Okay. His opinion as to what to arrest him for?
Yes, Your
What did he actually arrest him for?
He arrested him for murder. So, just let me know when you want to hear from me.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. So, my question is a two-part question, or two questions. One is that after speaking to Mr. McCray, today he was told, Mr. McCray was told by the detectives that he was going to be charged. On page 22 of the interview transcript, line 12, Mr. McCray goes charged with what? Detective says conspiracy to commit murder. We're just giving you, Reeves then says on line 21, we're just giving you a heads up. Then, my next question is, after talking to the state attorney's office, Mr. Cooper specifically was there, you arrested him for murder.
So you want to bring out this detective's out-of-court statement for the truth of the matter asserted?
I want to bring out the detective's statement because that's what he did in this follow-up to conclude his investigation in this case based on everything that he did, based on all the evidence that he had. He was going to arrest the defendant to do a charge of conspiracy.
Yeah, but the question is, in the interview you made of the defendant, you told him X. Is that right?
Yes. To the defendant, yes.
To the defendant.
Yes.
Isn't that an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted?
This was a custodial interrogation that he was basically being informed of what he was being arrested for. Mr. McCray then could have, if he chose to, have an opportunity to talk to the police about that, which would have gone further into the interview, which would not have been hearsay. None of that would have been hearsay.
Had Mr. McCray responded or if it was being offered to prove the defendant's response or effect on the listener type of thing, but didn't you tell me he invoked and so therefore we're not getting any defense responses to that statement?
Correct.
Okay.
second one?
Sure.
Nothing further.
Okay. Anything else from either side? All right, then my ruling is as such. The question eliciting what this detective told the defendant at his interview out of court, I don't believe is relevant, and on top of which I believe is hearsay. But the question about what you arrested him for, murder, that's an action he took and a charge he imposed based on his investigation, I will allow that question. That's relevant, and that is not hearsay, and you can ask the second question, but not the
Yes, ma'am.
first question.
Yes, ma'am.
Both sides understand that?
Yeah, sure, and just to be clear, when he asks what the detective arrested Mr. McCray for, are you characterizing that as murder? Because again, he arrested him for second degree murder, but it has to be tied to first degree murder.
I'm just saying, I'm just asking him what he arrested him for, and his answer is murder. His answer is murder.
All right, is there anything else coming? I mean, we'll take the objections as they come up and
No, that was-
the rest of your cross-examination.
No, that was, I was concluding my cross-examination with that, Your Honor.
And are we free to reference the grand jury in the indictment of first degree murder if they try and argue that he was arrested for second degree murder?
Well, you'll have redirect. You ask whatever questions you think you need to ask, and you make whatever objections you think you need to make. For scheduling purposes, once we are done with Detective Reese, then is the state going to announce rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So can we bring the jury back now to then conclude his testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring back Detective Reese and he can retake his stand. All right, Detective, welcome back. We are now going to bring in the jury to continue with the cross-examination. Thank you. You all may have a seat. We have some jurors in the restroom. Apparently there's a long restroom line, so it's going to be a little longer.
Okay.
We'll be all in recess.
Thank you.
Court staff can take a recess. All right.
Recess in here. Normally during recess, they don't go to me. Everybody has to go. It's not my courtroom, so I don't know.
You don't need them to refer to transcripts.
I can look.
We're done.
Yes, sir.
Sound off?
Oh.